All right, cool. I tell people I have astonishingly poor decision-making skills because I definitely said no to the chance to join Facebook and Twitter as a first 20 employee of both. So maybe you should ignore everything I'm about to say. We'll find out. All right, I'm actually here sort of to talk a little bit about, it's a little bit informed by that, but I'm really here to talk today and really to have a conversation, honestly, about a topic that's very important to me, right? And that's really about what happens when you feel like you've run out of luck. For 10 seconds of context, I am founder of a company called Emissary. I've been working on it, when current investors ask me how long I've been working on it, I tell them about 3 years, but the truth is it's actually about 4. And the reason for that is we definitely underwent a fairly grinding and brutal pivot about a year and a half in. What Emissary does today is pretty simple. Sales teams come to us to get direct access to former employees of the companies they're selling to. So if you're trying to sell to Sony, if you're trying to sell to Google, if you're trying to sell to a big, complicated organization, what you need to know about that organization isn't written down. It's locked up in people's heads. And ultimately, what we're doing is providing sales organizations with the ability to do that. We are post-Series A. We raised about a $10 million Series A about a year ago. We are about 40 employees. We are quadrupling this year in terms of revenue, and we look to do it again next year. So it's, holy shit, a little bit right now, kind of crazy. But again, not here to talk about that today. I really want to talk about what happened before that. And yeah. All right, there we go. So I'm going to try and, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by trying to maybe tell that story for 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. If I'm talking too fast, we'll see. But also, like I said, I like to keep this casual. I like to keep this conversational. If you've got questions as I'm going, call them out. And then I'm going to try and end with 5 key devices, tactics, learnings I wish either it did or wish I did. Some of them were, hey, I made a good decision. A lot of them were, I wish I had made this good decision, but I didn't. 5 key ideas. And look, like I said, it's also meant to be open Q&A. So as we go, please continue to have the conversation. Good? Yeah. Good. All right. Roll the dice. Let's do it. So what is Emissary? Why? So from day one, there's been a core idea about Emissary that's motivated me, right? And the core idea from day one was always a belief that the most valuable knowledge in the world is not written down. Right? This is a belief I developed coming out of Google and seeing a company of Google scale making terrible decisions on a regular basis, because it turns out that not all the knowledge in the world is on the internet or in data. There's a lot of human knowledge that is locked up in all of us. Another way of thinking about this is we all have knowledge that's valuable to somebody. And if you think about it, a second, yeah, I probably know something that's valuable to somebody, but we don't know who. The core idea of Emissary has always been to match people with the organizations that find their knowledge valuable and to do it at scale. We've always believed from day one that if we can do that, that we can really change the world. So how do we go about doing that? Because that's a great idea in theory, but who's paying for that? Who are the experts? Who are we matching them up with? We didn't really know. So first idea was this. We said, well, we don't really know any customers, and we don't really know any experts, but we know who does. And that was specifically B2B trade publications. So a company like the Oil and Gas Journal has this incredible network of people who know everything there is to know about oil and gas, and this incredible network of people who are already paying for information about oil and gas. And so we said, well, wouldn't it be convenient if we didn't ever have to actually learn about our users, if we could just go to these companies who already have these audiences and let them operate the expert network? So we'd go to the Oil and Gas Journal as an example and say, hey, do you want to be able to offer on-demand access to your experts, to your audience? And they would say, yes, that sounds like a great idea. We'd love to do that. So again, we were signing up lots of different media partners to create these little expert communities that they were selling to their audiences. Anyone want to guess why this didn't work? Seriously, anyone want to guess? They were too busy. So that's exactly right. What we learned is they signed up. Oh, I'll talk about this in a second. But when I was raising our seed round off of this, there was one investor, a guy named Roy Bahat at Bloomberg Beta. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, he's awesome. He was the one investor who, when I spoke to, said, David, I love the vision. I love what you're doing. I love the company. Not a chance in hell I'm investing. And he said, because this is how it's going to fail. And then proceeded to lay out for me the exact next 18 months of what we were about to go through. When we pivoted, I sent him a 3-word email. I said, "You were right." That was it. All right. So these are actual slides from our pitch deck, by the way, from our seed pitch deck in 2013, late 2013. And this is a slide that I will be beating myself over the head about for a very long time, because I say only 3 assumptions, only 3 that we need to know in order for this to work. We need to show that we can acquire these media partners. We need to show that they can acquire experts. And we need to show that they can acquire customers for us. If we prove those 3 things, it's trivial, it's solved, it's easy. And I was like, and look, we proved 2.5 of them. Right? So we're pretty much done. We're pretty much all the way there. Of course, the problem being that last check mark never went from yellow to green. Nonetheless, we raised a seed round. We built a product, actually a pretty cool product. It was really, in retrospect, it was really one of the first conversational interfaces we had seen. Really cool for booking. And it was a really exciting experience. We raised a ton of money. We developed a partnership with the New York Times. We moved into their offices for 6 months. We had this grand vision. We started signing up partners left and right. We signed 25 partners in 2 months, excuse me. And we're ready to go. We're ready to go. We're ready to go. Oh, nope. Go back. Hello, there we go. So, spring 2014. You'll see 2 lines here. The blue line was our target. The orange line was the actual. Those were the actual number of conversations being booked through our platform. We had signed 30 partners, right? They had all told us, we're going live, we're really excited. And sure enough, they brought on lots of experts. Actually, Alistair Kroll, who gave a talk before, was actually one of them. But when it came to actually working with us to actually bring on board customers to market, they're like, yeah, this is really important to us. We'll get back to you in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And in particular, as a product company, holy shit was this miserable. Because we could just keep developing new features and new features and new features, right? That's your inclination when you're technical is, hey, what else can we ship? Well, let's build something, let's make this better. But when you have no feedback loop, which we had none of, there was nothing to do. At this time, we're about 7 people. I'd hired up a little bit after the money. And everyone's seeing what I'm seeing. And, as I'm a solo founder, and my job to keep us going. Let's push. We can do this. Keep the attitude high, positive, energetic. People keep tapping me on the shoulder. My lead investor said, "David, I think you're depressed." I said, "I'm not depressed. I just need to work harder." My wife tapped me on the shoulder and said, "David, you're depressed." I said, "I'm not depressed. I just need to work more." And so we kept pushing, and we kept pushing, and we kept pushing. And it kept feeling like pushing on a string. It kept feeling like whatever effort we made, it didn't seem to move any fucking needles. And so we made a decision. I made a commitment to the team. Right about 2/3 of the way through this graph, I said, when it comes to September 1st, 2014, we will make one of 3 decisions. 3 decisions. We had one of 3 ideas for why shit was failing. First idea is we were trying to service lots of different partners at the same time. We should have only been working with 1 or 2. So if we're going to fire most of our customers, focus. Second one was, the problem is that we are underinvesting in our services side. Let's hire up. The third one was, fuck this shit. Let's be out. Let's pivot. In particular, it's worth pointing out, we had spent only really about a little more than a third of our initial seed round when we started making this decision. I'll talk about this a little more, but from my perspective, I think one of the few good decisions I really made was, even though we had lots of money in the bank, early on we looked at how much it would cost to do each of these 3 options right. And we realized that if we're going to take a pivot or we're going to hire up, we needed to have the money in the bank to do them right, and that the worst thing in the world would be to be going down taking half-ass swings. And that's why we made the decision when we did, is because we said, if we're going to do this, we're going to make sure we're investing properly to make this happen. So the decision we ended up making was number 1 for the time being. We cut partners. We cut, of the 20-odd partners we had, we cut down to 3. In particular, O'Reilly Media, who many of you have heard of, right? We had a great partnership with them. We were going to be building the O'Reilly Media Expert Network powered by Emissary, going live October 14th at Strata, New York, with 3,000 attendees and 75 experts on hand, right? And we were all in for this shit. I told everyone on the team, I said, guys, this is going to be the thing that determines whether or not this works. We are all in. That's fucking awesome. Quick side note. Right after that, my wife and I are like, great, this is a great time to have a kid. So my son, Henry, who was the same age as the pivot, is born on September 1st, 2014. I bring this up, first of all, because when I tell people I pivoted with a 4-week-old at home, they say, you're a fucking idiot. They're not wrong. But I also actually, one of the things I think I've learned building a company and having a child at the same time is that anyone who tells you that that can't be done or that that's not smart is lying. That if anything, the skills of being an entrepreneur train you to become a parent in the sense of being comfortable with uncertainty, showing up every day, and being a parent circumscribes your life as an entrepreneur. It helps you set priorities. Now, admittedly, I'm also going to say, you also have to be able to ask for help. And thankfully, we both did. My wife's a doctor. She also works 80 hours a week. But I will say this. I think anyone who says you can't be an entrepreneur and have a child is fighting their own battles. And I think it's totally worthwhile and mutually reinforcing. And it's a quick side note. All right, so October 14th. This is October 9th. This email is an email from O'Reilly saying, hey, we're really excited, but I think we're going to push back 4 months. I've got the whole team pushing for this. We're putting in, we're working 16-hour days every day. I get this email. Fuck. That day was the first time that I was able to stop deluding myself. There were 4 ideas that I realized. One is we weren't failing. Failing would have been great. Failing would have been awesome. Failing would have been evidence. We weren't failing. We were failing to fail. Ask yourself, are you failing or are you failing to fail? Second thing was the timing was wrong. We were trying to be evangelizing for something that clearly no one was enthusiastic about. You can't force that shit. The reason publishers kept on saying, yeah, we're really excited, but we're not doing this. There's only so much you can manufacture at that time. You can try and stay alive till the timing is right. But we had lost confidence in that. Third one was the hardest one, and it was so much to realize. There are people out there who can build amazing partner organizations, partner services businesses. I've met a couple of them now. There was a company called Group Commerce in 2010 that was a little bit modeled after what we were doing, or we modeled a little bit after what they were doing. And I looked at that CEO and I said, you know what? He's a great CEO for this kind of business because it's a partner management business. I didn't know fuck all about it, and it didn't motivate me. It didn't move me. It didn't drive me. I said, I'm not the right person to build this particular business. All of these realizations came really pretty much in a span of about 2 hours sitting at home on the night of October 14th, right? And it all led to the last one, which was that I was depressed. That, I had been showing up at the office, wandering around, hiding in offices. I've been avoiding sending emails. I've been sleeping poorly, right? And there's so much of this language in the world of entrepreneurship about how we need to fight, we need to persist, and we need to show up, and it's true. And at the same time, to be able to candidly say I'm depressed. When I said those words for the first time out loud to my wife, I physically started shaking. It was this incredible feeling of, oh my God, I can finally say this, I can finally admit this. And I'm a little embarrassed to say, I felt relieved. I felt great. I felt like I had been trying to force this thing that wasn't me, that wasn't what I was doing. And it was great. It felt liberating. And the next day I showed up at the office and I said, all right, guys, I don't know what we're doing, but it's not this. Are you in? And they said, what took you so long? Another important thing. Everyone else knows before you know. As an entrepreneur, your eyes are down, your head is down. Listen when other people talk. First decision, burn the fucking ships. Don't look back. Delete the code, or at least, if you're not going to delete it, at least make sure it's not easily accessible. Fire your customers. If you are trying to have one foot in one leg and one in another, it's not going to work. That's a decision I'm very happy about. Check your gas tank. Right? First thing I did is we had 7 people. I said, who here is still excited about the original vision of Emissary? Who still believes that people's knowledge is valuable and that there will be a platform that connects that? And one person in a group of 7, to her credit, raised her hand and said, I'm not sure I'm so excited about this anymore. And that was how, and so we had a talk, and she moved on, right? We said it's not, if you're not energized by this vision, it's not the right time, right? One of the hardest questions during a pivot, for sure, is what do you do with headcount? What do you do with the people who are on your team? Whoever has still got the energy, who's got their gas tank, right, who feels like they're still willing to fight, those are the people you want to keep going to war with. And the rest, you're not doing them a favor by keeping them around, and they're not doing themselves a favor either. We didn't have to let anyone go. This was someone who, we just mutually agreed it. All right, so restart. Try lots of random fucking ideas, lots of web pages, lots of various domains that we owned, retain.co, scout.io, right? Built a half dozen prototypes, tried them out, but it still felt like we were just wandering and spinning. This was about a month and a half of just trying random shit and feeling completely dislocated. And let me tell you, when you have to write updates to your investors every month, right, when they've invested $1.7 million in you already, and you are just like, we don't fucking know what we're doing. We're trying a bunch of shit. It's kind of bad. Right? Those emails suck. And so we decided our problem was that we were not paying close enough attention to our users. We were trying ideas. And we said, we need to just understand who the hell actually needs this. Where's that fountain of demand of people who just are jumping out of their goddamn seats saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I'm going to talk a little more about this. I actually did this out of order. So the first thing we did is we crashed about 6 conferences in 3 weeks and did over 500 interviews in those 3 weeks, right? And the trick, how do we do 500 interviews in 3 weeks? Is we reduced our conversation to 4 questions. We wouldn't take notes, right? What we would do is we would ask for their business card at the end of the conversation. We had reduced the core of what we did to 4 questions, only 4 questions that really helped us understand users. And for every yes of a question, we would fold down a corner of the business card, stick it in our back pocket afterwards. Then twice a day at lunch, and at the end of the day, we would meet up. We would put all of our shit we would put all of our cards in a basket. We would dump them out, and we would use that to tell the stories of the people we'd met. Right? This is ultra lean user research. Incidentally, coffee lines are 100% the best place to do this in my experience. Doing so came up with 4 key principles. Who was jumping out of their chair saying they need this? People-oriented, under time pressure. Zero-sum thinkers was an interesting one. It wasn't one we caught the first time around, right? People said, if I'm going to put the time into talking to someone and get this information, I want to feel like I have an advantage over other people. I win, you lose. I know in the startup community that's often not a language we talk about. We talk about being collaborative, but there are a lot of people out there who have this mindset. And the last thing is this is going to sound a little silly, is a lot of people just say, why would I need to know things? It's amazing what you actually learn when you listen to people, but understanding the value of knowledge intrinsically, incredibly valuable. We used that to come up with a gigantic-ass list of potential user types. All of these were wrong, but one of them was ad agencies. This man is Josh Jacobs. He is the CEO of an ad agency. I get on the phone with him. Josh, what do you use experts for? Oh, we use experts for our pitches. Okay. How do you understand the company you're pitching? Oh, we don't. It sucks. So, Josh, if I could provide, give me a company you're pitching, Mercedes-Benz. If I could provide you with somebody who used former CMO, former VP of marketing, left in the last 9 months, would you be interested in having that person consult on your pitch? I'll never forget this, because this was the lights from the heaven moment. As he stopped and he said, David, he said, if you have 5 people like that on your platform, I would pay for all 5 of them today, and I would pay any amount you told me, just to make sure my competitors didn't get them. That was the moment when I understood, right? Then it goes back to the zero-sum thinking. About a month later, we're hustling up. We have our first actual paid engagement. Another ad agency pitching the Olive Garden. We get the former COO of the Olive Garden on the other line. We are literally just doing whatever we can to recruit the experts. And we're listening in on the call. And the guy says, yeah, I hired the 3 people you're going to be pitching. Let me tell you everything you need to know about them. And you could hear, I always say this, you could hear on the other side the jaws dropping. That was the moment when we knew. And that was really the beginning of exiting the pivot. It was that moment of, oh my God, somebody's jumping out from this. Somebody's jumping at this. One of my mentors has this line, and I think it's exactly right, that there's 2 phases to building a startup. First phase is pushing the boulder uphill. Second phase is the boulder chasing you downhill. There's still a fucking boulder at all times. I certainly feel it right now. But that moment is the moment when the boulder kind of crested, right? We still had all sorts of questions about how we're going to scale it, how we're going to pivot, how we're going to make it technical, right? It turns out ad agencies weren't even our primary customers. It ended up being enterprise sales organizations. Fine. But from my perspective, that to me marked the end of the pivot. Year 1, we went from 0 to almost $100,000 in monthly recurring revenue, signed a bunch of fucking awesome logos, right? And from day 1 of our pivot, almost 5 months after we started the pivot process, so it was almost a 5-month-long pivot process. So from day 1 of when we count, from March 1st, less than a year later, we had raised that $10 million Series A. All right, so that's the story of the pivot. 5 lessons. 5 ideas that I've synthesized, that I've thought about, of what I think we did right, what we did wrong, right? For those of you who may be thinking about this, you can go. All right. Who here's been skydiving? Oh, all right, nice. So my experience going skydiving, I've gone 6 or 7 times, is the scariest part by far is the plane ride up. The same is true with pivoting, right? Once you're fucking out of the plane, you're too busy feeling the wind going by to actually worry about the fact that you're out of the plane. Managing the stress, the tension, getting to the moment to decide to pivot is by far the hardest part. Why? Again, this language of persistence. Sunk costs, I've pushed so much into this. I'll tell you that, again, I kept pushing back our moment of pivot. Okay, yeah, let's try one more thing, let's try one more thing, let's try one more thing. Desire to maintain a self-image. So, how do you deal with that? So there's an idea of something called a commitment device. Commitment device comes out of the language of economics, of behavioral economics, and the core idea of the commitment device says that comes out of the recognition that your current self and your future self are 2 very different people. A commitment device is a way to bind your future self to decisions you're making today. The example I'm using here is of Odysseus lashing himself to the mast when he was going through past the sirens, right? He said, I understand that my future self is going to want something that my present self doesn't want. How can I force myself to do that? For Emissary, our commitment device, which was frankly kind of weak, I wish we'd done it better, was once we hit a certain dollar amount, we knew we were pivoting no matter what if we didn't have the traction we looked for. We committed ourselves to that. I put myself in public on that. There was once upon a time a very cool company called Stick with 2 Ks at the end, which actually said if you set a weight loss goal, the commitment device there was for every pound you miss at the end of it, you donated $1 to a charity you hated. So there were real consequences. Again, commitment devices are a way of binding your future self. When I was a teenager and I would never wake up in school, I would put my alarm clock as physically far away from my bed as possible as a way of, again, forcing my future self. So create commitment devices. Treat your fucking dollar as a life meter. You wouldn't change your strategy in Zelda when you're down to your last fucking heart. Do it earlier. People pivot way too late. All right, that's idea 1. Idea 2, get help, please, right? Again, one of the reasons I do this talk is because I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs who are going through what I went through, and they're all doing the same thing, which is they're refusing to acknowledge that they're fucking depressed. As soon as I say, have you ever had a fantasy about firing your entire company and just blowing it all up? Oh my God, absolutely, all the time. I've had a dream, I still have this dream, actually, where I wake up, where I go to my office and everyone's like, yeah, you're a gigantic fraud, we thought you knew that, we're all quitting today, right? There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. Being open about that is okay. I'm open about it with my team. They all know that. They're going to absolutely prank me one day and do this to me. Get help. Again, first of all, show of hands. Who here's an entrepreneur? Who here sees a therapist? Who here sees a CEO coach? Guys, if there's one thing that I think made the difference between successfully getting through the pivot, it wasn't any of these ideas or tactics or shit. It was managing my goddamn emotions. I have an amazing wife. she's not a therapist. She's not a CEO coach, right? I have friends, they're not therapists, they're not CEO coaches. Co-founders are not therapists, they're not CEO coaches. Therapists and CEO coaches help you deal with the insane amount of stress and pressure and uncertainty that being a founder is about. One of my investors offered to pay for them. I think it's actually something that great investors do, is they understand that mental health is essential, especially in a pivot. And from my perspective, there's one of the things that's really messed up is there is still a stigma around the idea of seeing a therapist. I'm from New York, so thankfully a little bit less in New York because everyone fucking has a therapist. But there is still a stigma about it, right? Something has to be wrong with you to see a therapist. No, there doesn't have to be something wrong with you. On that note, burnout. There's a famous story about Richard Feynman, that Richard Feynman was completely burned out. And one day he was playing around with some plates in Cornell, and he noticed that some plate was wobbling as it was spinning, and that the logo in the center of the plate was wobbling at a different rate than the wobble of the plate. He started playing around with it just as a toy idea. One thing led to the next, led to the next. That ended up being the foundational work that defined his Nobel Prize. The research on burnout seems to suggest the best thing you can do when you are burning out is do lots of little tasks that you know will work well. It's not to take a break. It's not to take a vacation. I've often heard this summarized succinctly as the antidote to burnout is not success, is not vacation, it's progress. I wish I could say we did this on purpose, but the best thing we did was those 500 interviews, because those were 500 little morsels of progress. When you fail, when you acknowledge failure, what you're basically doing is you're admitting to yourself, or you've taken a big risk, a big effort, and you've failed. What happens is you condition yourself to expect big effort yields failure. You have to recondition yourself. All right, that's theme 2, get help, manage burnout. Theme 3, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. The single best thing we did is the fact that we were obsessed with the problem. I talked to, again, probably 15 entrepreneurs a week. I'd say about 25% of them are obsessed with a problem. The rest are obsessed with a solution. Think a lot about this, because on your dark days, it's the problem, not the solution, that's going to keep you going. Right? When your solution fails, and it will fail, what's going to keep you moving? Be obsessed with the problem. Be obsessed with the problem. That's, again, from my perspective, one of the few things that kept us afloat. All right, good. Why are Sonic and Tails on this? There's an idea called the Fox and the Hedgehog. Anyone here ever heard of that? All right. Never occurred to me that this is a fox and a hedgehog. Fox and the Hedgehog is an old Greek idea that says the fox knows many small things, the hedgehog knows one big thing. Two modes of thinking. One in which there's a single defining thing that is everything, and the other is a flexible, intuitive, opportunistic model. If you read a book like Good to Great by Jim Collins, what he'll tell you is that great leaders, great founders are hedgehogs. They have one big idea that they're obsessed with. Elon Musk is clearly a fucking hedgehog. He focuses on one big idea at a time, right? Sometimes. Right? Foxes, again, are people who are scattered, flexible, intuitive. I think it's wrong. I think that there's time to be a fox and a time to be a hedgehog. There's a time to put your blinders on and say there's only one idea that matters, and there's a time that you have to be flexible and intuitive and opportunistic. Blanking on who. Somebody yesterday was talking a lot about this idea. One of the things that is very clear when you're in the middle of a pivot is you have to you're switching from hedgehog mode, where you're looking at lots of, focusing on one big idea, you stay back into fox mode. Flexible, intuitive, opportunistic. Staying close to users, I'll say it again. Staying close to your users matters. That was ultimately, they are the ones who are going to pull you out of this. It's easy to lock yourself in a room, especially if you're feeling depressed, isolated, frustrated, you don't want to be in front of people. I'm not an extrovert. I'm not somebody who enjoys going out and working a room. But I will tell you that staying close to users, staying close to people, asking yourself over and over again, what do people want? It's the only thing. This is, I don't know if people know this, this is a mantra that's on Google's walls everywhere. And even knowing it, you never know it enough. Talked about the four-corner trick. All right, last one. This one's also really hard because you just fucking failed. Trust your gut. Your instincts were good before, they're still good now. You don't believe this. I didn't believe it. Right? And there's one thing that held us back is I just took these people on this gigantic journey and look where it fucking took us. At first I was like, well, what do you think? What do you think? At some point, though, our intuitions are very powerful things. We don't really understand how they work. They're trained. And from my perspective, you will never be able to fully intellectualize your way out of this. One of the tricks we use a lot at Emissary is something called a pre-mortem. I'm going to ask again, has anyone here heard of a pre-mortem? All right. Pre-mortem is, to me, when we had that big Olive Garden call, we realized that we were switching from Boulder uphill to Boulder downhill. I got the whole team in the room. I got a big stack of Post-it notes. I gave everybody a pack, and I said, all right, I want you guys to imagine that it's 9 months from now, and we have failed again. And failed again, completely and utterly. And we are sitting around that room 9 months from now, and we are asking ourselves, what the fuck happened? Why did we fail? And we took 10 minutes to quickly write down as many different reasons we could fail as we could. And we put them all up on a whiteboard, and we kept them on a whiteboard pretty much for all of 2015 while we were growing the company. Look, nobody gets married thinking they're going to be divorced. No one starts a company thinking they're going to fail. But they do. The more that you can have an open and honest conversation about how could this fail, how will this fail, and hopefully the more you can have that conversation with your team, with your peers, with the people who are helping you build this, and it helps deal with a lot of the anxiety and the uncertainty. I wish the hell we had done a pre-mortem the first time. I'm glad we did one the second time. I'm going to close on 2 quick thoughts. The best thing about starting a company and the worst thing about starting a company is this. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about you. They don't care about your idea. They care about their problems. Your job is to make them care. On the flip side, you can try whatever you want because nobody cares. It's a little different when you're pivoting because people do care. You have existing customers, you have investors, you've got co-founders. This is one of the reasons why it's different when you pivot. And the more that you can do to have those kinds of candid conversations with people, the better. I'd like to end on one last quote, right, from Phil Lieben, who is CEO of Evernote. And this is something I think, again, is just absolutely true. He said that starting a company is not always, people always say, how's it going? Are you having a fun time? He'd say, no, are you kidding me? He said, it's not fun day to day. Month to month, it's the best fucking thing in the world, but there are days that suck. And again, that's okay. That's part of it. Starting a company is still the single most worthwhile activity I think anyone can do, making something happen. But it's okay to say that it's not always great. Anyways, that's what I've got. Thank you, guys.